Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Valley Service Organization, I'm Sue Jones, and I would like to welcome you to the first of our candidate forums. There's been so many of them that we've kind of, and we're the last ones, so we're kind of just moving around and playing different ways just by watching the other ones. Tonight we have our state legislative candidates who will be going first, and then the Saratoga Town Council candidate. And we were going to open it up to questions from the audience first for this group after we have them introduce themselves. And before I forget, Saratoga Sun and Josh Wood is live streaming via Facebook for those who want to watch it that way, or you can go back and watch it later as it's recorded. And also questions can come through there, and Josh, you can wave at us if you have any questions. This mic is trapped. It can't be mobile. Senator Hicks was supposed to be here. The other night when I came over, there was a herd of sheep on the road, so that's probably where he's at, trying to get through there. So if he arrives, we can catch up with him. And Senate District 11, Republican candidate, Leanne Stevenson from Riverside. She is Democratic candidate for Senate District 11. Incumbent House of Representative member Jerry Paxton for House District 47. And he is also from Encampment Riverside / either or, I guess. And Julie McAllister is his Republican challenger from Rock River for House District 47. So as I said, is there anyone in the audience who would like to ask these people a question? All right. Well, whoops, I forgot. We'll go this way. First off, tell us a little about yourself and why you would be the best person for this job. And I'm going to start with Julie on the far end.
No idea how loud that is. You guys can hear? All right, excellent. My name is Julie McAllister. As Joan said, I'm running against Mr. Paxton, the Republican primary for House District 47. The reason that I would vote for myself, if I wasn't running, vote for myself even though I'm running. That was a small joke, sorry, I'm not great at them. This is a big district, it's a big job. It's almost impossible to do right unless you're willing to take on a challenge that most people wouldn't even think about. I have no problem with any of that. That's just a welcomed adversary for something I feel like I can improve upon, work hard on, and champion. We have a big district, big, challenging district, some varied interests, but for the most part, it's a bunch of small towns, the heart of Wyoming, the heart of who we are here. And we need someone who's going to work just as hard as this district is large. And that's exactly what I will do. I don't believe Sue gave us a time limit, but I'm going to limit myself to that in hopes 3 minutes. All right. In hopes that you guys will engage and ask questions. If I don't know, I'll tell you I don't know, and most likely follow up and come through from there. So I would just end this by welcoming any of you to ask any questions of any nature, kind, or circumstance that you have, as I find that to be engaging and often very thought-provoking. It's very helpful for people in our position to hear what you guys have to say. So thank you for a few moments of your time. And I'm going to pass it to Mr. Paxton to allow him to introduce himself and then hopefully take your question. All right, thank you.
Well, I think most of the folks in here know me. I've been here for just over 47 years now. Straight out of college in Encampment as a teacher and then later as a school principal. I have served also as mayor of both Encampment and Riverside, and then on the town council and a county commissioner. So I have a pretty good idea of how the system works from the ground up. And of course, I've worked intimately with school boards and have a great deal of respect for all the things that they do. Now I'm on the education committee, I'm the vice chairman of the education committee. You know, I guess what I bring to the table here is a lot of experience in government from the ground up, and a lot of experience in our largest expenditure for the state of Wyoming. We spend about $1.5 billion every biennium on education. That's exactly half of our total biennium budget. So intimately acquainted with that. I'm on the revenue committee, which is probably the most challenging committee that you could be on because there just isn't a lot of appetite out there for raising taxes. I'm also on the select water committee, and of course, water is extremely important to the state of Wyoming, and especially important to the Platte Valley and areas that I represent up around Farson. And so I think that gives me a leg up on being able to make sure that our water is protected. I'm also on the natural resources funding, which is the wildlife part of that thing. So that pretty much covers Platte Valley from one end to the other. So I guess that's about it.
Leanne Stevenson. I live in Riverside and have a successful tourist business, the #2 industry in the state. I've lived in Wyoming for 41 years, and I've lived in Riverside for 11 years. A lot of you probably know that part of me, but you probably don't know that I'm a retired state employee from Cheyenne. I worked for the Attorney General's office in the Victim Services Division, working with the domestic violence, sexual assault programs across the state. I also was at the state level and at the county level in the Department of Family Services and did child abuse investigation, juvenile probation, and then at the state level worked at auditing domestic violence, Department of Family Services programs across the state. So I've had a lot of experience in working with the legislature as a state employee in educating legislators to take considerations of child protection, domestic violence, victim services, while working, on particular legislation with them. I have extensive experience in working with different groups of people with different competing interests, to make sure that everyone they can be safe in their homes and in their families. I also believe very strongly that public lands needs to stay in public hands. There was a little run at that particular issue last legislative session. Our public lands are the key to our future and to our children's future, and public access to public lands needs to continue. I serve on the Carbon County Senior Services Board, and I'm very in tune with the needs and of the growing population of elders that we have. I'm also on the Sierra Madre Water District, and I'm learning about municipal water systems, not just the agricultural systems, but our municipal water systems as well. I feel that government needs to stay out of people's private lives. People shouldn't be chastised for who they love, and that we need protection of that in our state legislature. Mostly what I want to tell you is that I intend to represent all of District 11. And when Representative Paxton talks about the size of the district, the senatorial district is even bigger. It does include Rawlins and St. Clair and Farson and Rock River. Thanks.
Okay, we have some questions that we received, some by email, some of them were writing, and then Cassie Western, my co-worker in this, we get together and do our generic questions. So since the crowd wasn't brave enough to ask, and you'll have to endure some of these generic questions. The first one was submitted to us, and some of them are quite lengthy, but the issues that these people deal with is very, very complicated. Actually, the issues that all elected folks deal with are very, very complicated, but the further up the chain you go, the more bureaucratic and complicated it becomes. This question said the past two legislative sessions seem to have brought forth some petty politics and power playing by some of those in leadership positions. An example of the legislature taking a deep dive into petty politics was brought up at the Carbon Power and Light annual meeting this June by Sean Taylor, Executive Director of WREA. In 2018, a bill easily passed that amended the move over law to include other emergency response crews like electrical linemen. To provide some measure of safety to them when they're working near roadways. What most people probably don't realize is that the bill was introduced in 2017, passed 3 readings in the House, and was on the consent agenda for 3rd reading in the Senate. An easy home stretch, one would say. That's when the story goes that the Senate decided they needed to show the House a thing or two. They voted to remove that bill that was widely supported from the consent agenda, and then 25 senators voted to kill it on 3rd reading. What would you propose be done to alleviate this petty power playing and get back to the business of taking care of the business of Wyoming? And I would start with Representative Paxton on that. And you'll have 2 minutes to answer the question.
Well, I guess the solution is don't elect people that would do such things. I think we encountered, this is probably the most contentious session that I've been through this past year, and we did encounter some of that same kind of thing. And there is a bit of a friction between the House and the Senate on certain things. Senate certainly we're trying to make some really heavy cuts in education above and beyond what the House is willing to do. We finally came up with our side, but you know, when sitting on the Revenue Committee, when the President of the Senate gets up in front of you and in your very first meeting and says there's no use trying to pass any revenue bills because they won't pass in the Senate, doesn't really incentivize you to go on and really work very hard at trying to find some revenue sources outside of what we already have. So, you know, the only solution I see is at the ballot box.
Yeah.
I agree with Representative Paxton, for sure. I have had a lot of experience in working with contentious situations, for instance, in sexual assault with police officers, judges, county attorneys, victim advocates, all with different and sometimes very competing directions. So I have some experience in that. My number one thing is to stay true to what my district wants me to do, or what they want me to take to Cheyenne. I think that also working together with our representatives here, for instance, working with Mr. Paxton directly to make sure that we are carrying forth to Cheyenne what needs to be done for District 11. That's the most important thing that we can do.
Sorry about that, I had a good look at the microphone, make sure I wasn't still muted. I do agree that some turnover and making sure that the elected people, what you're doing at the ballot box matters, but when you're there, ask why do people want the job they're asking for? Is it for personal prowess? Is it to promote themselves? Or is it because they're really willing to work hard and they care about this and take that maturity to the level it needs to be? This is a fairly mild example from a number of other examples I've been given of what's gone on in this past session and sessions prior. And quite frankly, I have no taste for it. It's fairly disgusting to me. I don't understand when people are acting like they're 12 years old. These are all adults that are dealing with your money, your livelihoods, your life in the future. And I'm quite angry about it, and I would hope every single voter is as well. We need maturity in there. We need people who will cross party lines and find a way to make things work as a representative of just a single district. It's not impossible to represent your district, but it can get very challenging working with other people with different ideas, different districts, and different populations within those districts. So you need to bring that level of problem solving and that level of bringing above what your own personal beliefs are to find a solution to a problem and work around things instead of just focusing on a single issue. I think it just goes farther than that, and it really comes to the root of why people are in legislature. What do they want it for? You're frankly asking for a nightmare. Why do you want the nightmare? Personally, I want the nightmare because I feel it can be done better. I feel that we can represent ourselves, our districts, and who we are in a more professional and substantial and efficient way. That needs to be done. This particular law that was passed, I'm quite happy it was passed. Got a lot of family in road construction, a lot of family who work on the side of the road, including a son who had just got into law enforcement. And I'm glad he passed it, but it did take too long, and that pettiness should have never been there. Thank you.
Sue, can I ask a follow-up question specifically to that question?
Yeah.
Just real quick. You said 25 people. I really don't need a microphone. I can talk loud. You said 25 people voted against that or shut it down. Was Hicks or anybody here locally involved in that? Against? He did vote against it? Okay, thank you.
I didn't bring that up my question in all fairness, but you missed it, I guess.
His vote is public record.
Yes.
I don't need a mic either.
Well, we may need to use one.
I have two questions. One, I think was just answered. Representative Paxton, you said the president of the Senate came up and told you it's not even worth considering revenue bills. For those of us who are new to Wyoming, who is the senator, who is the president?
You want a name or do you want the description of the position?
I want the name.
Eli Bebau.
Okay. And if I can change to a different question for Ms. McAllister.
Yeah, and we'll allow each one to, so
Yeah.
if it's specific, we'll kind of tailor it.
I think this is mostly specific for Ms. McAllister. I heard a little bit about you, but what I did not hear in your introduction is what experience do you have in politics and working with the legislature? We know Mr. Paxton and Ms. Stevenson have experience, but what experience do you bring to the table?
That's a very good question, and my answer might be, please, you are such a boast, to tell you the truth, how about we start there. Master's in public administration preceded by a bachelor's in political science. As far as actual legislative elective experience, I have none. But I have a lot of experience working hard for what I want, doing what I know to be right, not doing what I know to be wrong. People ask me all the time, why didn't I run for dog catcher, something lower? I want to be involved on a level that makes a difference. I want my hard work. I want my time away from my family and my children to matter. I want it to count for something. So I struck my sights on somewhere that I can make a difference.
Any other questions from the audience? Sure. Commissioner Johnson.
Microphone.
Well, we'll keep the responses kind of in that 2-minute range.
This is for everybody, whoever wants to start, it doesn't matter. There's a pretty serious epidemic in Carbon County and the state of Wyoming legislate in the federal level too, opiate addiction. What as representative or senator are you going to do to address that? For your information, Carbon County ranks number 2 in that category from the bottom, just right slightly above Fremont County.
Go ahead. I just finished.
Well, there's no doubt that that is an extremely serious problem, and it has hit Carbon County, and I think you read about all the things that are, some of the things anyway, that happen, probably the tip of the iceberg when it comes right down to it. But, you know, this is a statewide problem. It isn't just confined to Carbon County, so it requires a statewide solution. And I think, I know that for a fact that the Judiciary Committee is working on some things. I know the Department of Health is working on some things. You know, I hope that we see some legislation this coming session that really addresses that. I know we have some people that are a lot more knowledgeable about the topic than I do that could probably bring some legislation that certainly would move us in the right direction. But I think our law enforcement people have really had their hands full in dealing with that, and we have, I think, addressed it to a degree in Carbon County, but it needs to be addressed in a more forceful way.
It's a great question. I see in my experience when I worked particularly at Department of Family Services, we worked very closely with the Department of Health. Department of Health is the licensor of addiction programs across the state. Certainly to make sure that they are adequately funded and adequately staffed to address in each county, but I also feel that there can be some coordinated efforts on the local level. The answers that they have in Cheyenne may not work in Rawlins, for instance. I think that the addiction programs in both of the prisons that have been cut in the past need to be reinstituted, because a lot of our people that are coming into the correctional facility are coming in with addiction. In fact, addiction is what led to their criminal activity in a lot of cases. So I'd like to see the addiction programs reinstituted in both the women's prison and Rawlins, Newcastle, and Riverton. The addiction, the opioid addiction is going to take all of us. It's not going to be an answer from the legislature. It's not going to be an answer from the Department of Health. It's going to take involvement with our churches and our communities all the way through. So I'm going to be looking for really innovative ideas, ways to support people who are trying to quit drugs.
This, in a certain way, reminds me of methamphetamines. We're behind the 8 ball in Wyoming. I'd love to see evidence proven wrong. We're behind the 8 ball, and now we have a major problem. It's killing people, and it's killing everyone. You get a simple injury, you go to the doctor, they give you pain medication, they send you home with it, most likely just with the information that's attached from the pharmacy, and say, here you go, goodbye. Come back, we'll give you more. And now it's a major problem, and people are dying. I don't think we're going to legislate our way out of this. We need to stop being behind the 8 ball and stop denying these things are happening. This is another perfect example of waiting until it's a crisis before we even start discussing it on a civil level. Anyone can fall prey to this. Anyone. You go to your doctor, of course you trust them. Of course you're going to do what they say. They're there to make you better, to get you back on your feet. We're not going to legislate our way out of this. This is past legislature. Do I think there's legislation that could be passed that's useful to help us? Absolutely. But that's not going to be the sole answer. This is a bad problem. If there's a demand, there's going to be a supply. Period. It's going to happen. We have to work on a community level. We have to work with our neighbors. We have to open communication lines. We have to offer alternatives to just opioids. One of the most addictive substances on the planet that we've ever managed to synthesize. It shouldn't be used the way it is. It's a Band-Aid that we hand out, not we, doctors, medical professionals hand out and say, here, take this, you'll be okay. And a lot of people, and I have interacted with some of these people in different circumstances, end up addicted and have absolutely zero intention. and now they have to deal with that and the long-term effects of it. This goes a lot farther past legislation. This, like I said, and I am repeating myself, is an example of we waited till it's a crisis, and now we try to do something about it. We should have gotten ahead of this beforehand. We didn't. We need to catch up. We need to learn from it and stop letting this happen to Wyoming. Stop letting this happen to our neighbors. Thank you.
Kate, you had a question?
Okay, I kind of have two questions. Oh, I don't know if I'm going to hold this. Okay, thanks, Cassie. Number one, I'm curious about who each of your number one campaign donors are. And as a follow-up, I'm interested if any of you is my guy or girl to start working on passing, it's a very specific bill that needs to be passed by each state, or as many states as we can get, I forget the figure, to force a constitutional convention to vote on an amendment to the United States Constitution to ban PAC money, corporate money, and dark money from campaign finance. There is a draft bill ready. There are volunteers ready to go. We need someone to take this to the Wyoming legislature and start shepherding it through. And I'm wondering if any of you three are interested. Thank you.
Leanne, I'll let you start.
Let's see, I'll start with the donors. We have a report that's due to the Secretary of State. We report quarterly, and I think it's August 28th, and then that will become public record. My biggest contributor so far has been Leroy Stevenson. That was my husband. I've had 3 other contributions from Republican people in my town that have been pretty open of saying that they were supporting me. And I also had the endorsement of the Wyoming Education Association. And that was the only non-individual contribution that I received. So I would encourage you to look at Secretary of State's website, and you can look at all of who gives what, all in the details. As far as a constitutional amendment, I have read some about it, and I think I have an understanding about that it would take out the dark money, I guess is what you would say, or the corporate money, where a corporation is using it as free speech and they have very deep pockets. I think that it will take some learning and it will take some hurdles in Wyoming. I just don't know what appetite is going to be in the Senate for that. And I'd like to move that direction. I will advocate, I will say it out loud, but I don't know that I'm going to be able to be in a position as a freshman senator to bring any of that forward. But I would support it. Thank you.
I think the problem is a lot bigger on a national level, of course, than it is in Wyoming. And for the most part, Wyoming's laws are pretty strict about how and when we can take money, when we take money from those kinds of things. So you know, maybe there's someone out there that gets a lot of money in a big check, but certainly not me. I get quite a few smaller contributions, and I get, like the tourism board gave me some money this year because I supported the tourism industry. Got some money from Century Link that services part of my district that I serve in, but I haven't gotten a lot of contributions this year, and most of them, you know, are somewhere a couple $100, I think. And if you've ever run a campaign, that doesn't go very far. If you just buy one of those big 4x8 signs, it costs over $100 for that, you know. And so the radio and the newspaper ads and all those things kind of add up pretty fast. And you know, I don't think that you should be rich you should have to be rich to run for office. And so if I had to finance my campaign strictly on my own, it'd probably be pretty sparse because I'm a retired teacher, so that tells you a lot about that. But certainly, reform on the national level, I think, is more important than the state level, but I wouldn't have a problem at all supporting legislation to put some further restrictions on that. The last thing in the world we need is to have big corporations buying our vote. We're really lucky in Wyoming. We have a number of people that come in, the lobbyists, that we don't have a staff like the state legislators do, and we have to rely on them for some information, but it's usually the case that we have one lobbyist that's on one side of the issue and the other lobbyist on the other side of the issue. They provide us information, and then we have to sort that out through our own research to make sure that they're both accurate. And if you ever lie to us once, you just as well hang up your deal, because you're never going to, you lost your credibility, so we won't talk to you again.
First, to answer your question directly, my biggest campaign contributor is myself. After that, my husband, and it is expensive, and it's not fun, but you gotta believe in what you're doing, or else what are you doing using oxygen? As far as the bill, I don't know for sure if I'm thinking of the same one that you're speaking of that I read. I cautiously support this, and I'm gonna be 100% honest with this problem why. You shouldn't be able to buy votes. And I probably naively believe this wasn't an issue in Wyoming. I have family who work in lobbying positions, cousins and other family who are in legislature every day. And there were members of legislature, I'm not even gonna name what committee or anything they're a part of, who would leave before the vote to call their contributors to ask a vote. And that's disgusting. Absolutely has no place there. It's like showing up to school naked, that's how inappropriate it is. And it shouldn't happen. So before I knew that was happening, did I think there was any need or call for it? No. Now I know that has happened and it has been a problem. Is there a need or call for it? Well, obviously we've seen a cause and effect here and an issue and a problem. We need to do something about it. I can't speak directly to the bill you're talking about because I haven't read it. And I would never support anything without researching it myself, reading it myself, and understanding it myself, and being able to engage in conversation about it on both sides. But the idea in general, absolutely. I do agree with these other two individuals that the national problem is bigger, but I'm sorry, I believe in Wyoming more. We deserve more, period. We should be better, and there's absolutely no reason we can't be better. We need to look at this and see why it's an issue, see why that actually happened, and see what we need to do to prevent it. You shouldn't be able to buy a vote. We are all here as equals, as taxpayers, as voting members. We all deserve the same work.
Thank you. Whoever wins will be talking.
Any other questions from you? We'll carry on. We'll go way out in left field here.
I thought that's where it was.
Oh, you do have one.
I have a question for the senators and the senators candidates, please, and it's in regard to tourism and also something a little elevated that's happening and been happening for quite a while, actually, in other states, which is ecotourism. And I think with Governor Reed's task force that went through the state recreation and state park, there's been quite an initiative to try and get some tourism and touring and eco-touring. I don't think any of us want buses like we got in Jackson, we want to keep our towns. But I think improving museum numbers of people, tourists, and then also my personal interest is kind of an entrepreneurial thing where I think our retired coal miners specifically, but any of our retired folks and our disabled military have the right of access to their public land. And just because they can't get there on their own anymore, doesn't mean the state can't help, in my opinion. So I'd like to know your opinion on what initiatives you may be considering as legislative people that are out there now through the task force that went through, at least talked about in February is what I heard, didn't go too far. And what things you're gonna do to like really kick up this tourism thing, because we have some really good funding sources already in place. And my favorite, as always, as an ex-coal miner, is the AML funding. And the side of the AML funding, excuse me, I never talked to the microphone. the side of the A&L funding that can go to help communities in health or various other places. They've expanded that a lot. And then for Carbon County specifically, Visitors Council, there's a fund there that is being put to wonderful use in advertising, and that can be expanded, but there is a legislative block. And that legislative block needs to be handled by the legislature with support from our next governor. And I'm just wondering what types of ideas you guys have to actually do what Nevada, do what Arizona, do what probably Utah's the best does, to get people, ecotourism from, they call that in Europe, get people here, not just staying in hotels and driving through and leaving to someplace in the Northwest, but staying here and looking at the Encampment Museum, and looking at the Hand Museum, and looking at the Medicine Bow Museum.
And the
And the
Saratoga.
Saratoga Museum, sorry, I thought that was a standard. Okay, looking at all these museums, and it's a nice little circle from Laramie all the way through, and it's a short circle, and people pay by the hour to have guides show them various things. But the block is a public lands legislative, as always, state of Wyoming legislative, and, you know, federal, state. So I just really would be interested in, you know, throughout the campaign, brainstorming, talking to people, you're thinking, these military vets who can't get out anymore for various reasons, they've hunted and worked on this land for many years, and they deserve. And I think our elders deserve it. You can't always get out there with one of those little
Okay.
things. So thank you.
All righty. I'll let Julie start with that.
You see if the battery's dead or not.
Yeah.
Come on. Wait, don't tell me that. Okay, just came on. One, please let me address the disability issue. My husband's disabled. In fact, I was at Game and Fish today having a nice argument about what was a trail and wasn't a trail for purposes of getting him in and out. You couldn't have a stronger support. You really couldn't. I would put my life on the line, and I have, for his rights as a hunter, as an outdoors person. He has every single right. So does every single disabled person. Until you've done it or had those challenges, you don't really know how hard it is. And it's ridiculous what's going on out there. That's one issue. Two, on the tourism, I'd love to hear the argument against tourism, because I haven't heard a valid one. We have funding sources available to come here, spend money. We can, I'll word it this way, take advantage of that. Why not improve their experience as tourists? Why not use that money to work back into our communities? Why not? If anyone has a valid argument against it, I'm here with an open mind and open ears. Why not? Why are we not moving on these things? And this probably comes back to the earlier question Sue asked, which, yes, it showed itself a bit more in this past legislative session, but unfortunately is a bit of an underlying tone with many legislators of personal agendas as to why they're there. You shouldn't be playing chess or gambling with people's lives or livelihoods. It's unethical. I don't know how you sleep at night. And here's a perfect example of that. If you can give me an ethical, viable argument why those funding sources shouldn't be used and legislation shouldn't be passed for tourism, and ecotourism is one name for it, or other tourism opportunities for people to benefit from the place we live in that we all adore and love, please bring me that argument. Please show me real, viable problems, and I'll be happy to sit down with you and we can problem solve. But unless there's a viable reason we shouldn't be using those sources, we need to be using those sources. Everything else is just an excuse. It's just someone's excuse for some other reason that they don't want to explain to you.
Well, there's no doubt how important the tourism industry is to the state of Wyoming. And this past year, we had the hospitality industry themselves came to the state legislature and asked us to impose a 2% tax on all the hospitality things, motel rooms, meals, all those kinds of things. And somewhere around 80% of that is paid by out-of-state people. And I was one of the sponsors of that bill because one of the problems we have is that every year the tourism industry has to come to the Appropriations Committee and beg for funds, and that's somewhere, I think, around $25 to $26 million out of the general fund. If we would have passed that bill, the 2% bill, it would have not only taken them completely off the general fund and made another $25 million, $26 million available for schools or counties and towns, all kinds of other things. But it would have given them an extra amount of money that could have been used to reinvigorate the film industry in Wyoming, for example. We got C.J. Box right up the road here that has sold the rights to his movie and probably be like Longmire filmed in New Mexico before if it comes to pass. We have to fully fund that in order to get the word out and to be able to do the kinds of things that we would really like to do. That's the big limiting factor right now is just revenue. And I don't think that the tourist industry should have to come and beg for money every year when they've actually volunteered to tax themselves 2%. Unfortunately, that bill went down in flames. We have a number of people that have signed a no new taxes pledge, and they considered that a tax, and their objection was, you know, if I go stay in a motel someplace in Wyoming, out of my local area, buy a meal or whatever, I'm going to be paying that tax. So it's an uphill battle, but we're going to take them on again.
Well, I guess I have a macro view and a micro view. My business is tourism. We own a campground. My training when I worked at the state was making places accessible, because one of the things that we had to do was be accessible in the different programs that I worked in, and I brought that into my business as well. We have sites that are accessible for people who use mobility equipment. We also work closely with the VA hospital in Cheyenne, and they bring hunters who have that use different types of mobility assistance and any other kinds of assistance that they may need, we provide. That's on the micro level. On the, the Big Visitors Council here supports finally, in a separate appropriation, the museums that are in our county. And they produce brochures that send people to all of the museums across our county. And I think that was a wonderful first step. I'd like to see the Visitors Council target their funds a little better than what they did. I served on that council for a while. But I think that tourism, that is a number 2 in the state. But one of the hidden problems that we have promoting our tourism is staff. You can speak to anyone that works, has a motel here or a restaurant, and talk to them about staffing and the difficulty of finding people to work. So we need to balance promoting our tourism with also supporting the employees that will be working in that tourism. They need to make a living wage. They can't afford to live in Saratoga, Wyoming and wait tables. So we need to also look at that balance and make sure that we have the workforce available.
Any other questions from the audience? We have some time here for more of our county elected officials, commissioners, sheriff, clerk, district court clerk, assessor, treasurer, and coroner. All duties are specific, unique, directed by state statute. Would you be for legislation eliminating party affiliation for these offices? And I'll start with Representative Paxton.
Well, I guess my feeling on that would be immaterial. I think it's the folks that are out there that hold those positions that ought to come to us and tell us whether or not they think they ought to be a nonpartisan. I don't have a problem with it, really, but I know there are some people that might. But really, I think it would be easy enough to make that happen. But I think it has to be initiated by the county officials and come to us through that channel in order for us to be able to know that that's exactly what they want to do and see what kind of support they have out there for.
Leanne.
I agree 100% with Representative Paxton. I feel that if that's the desire of the county officials in my district, we'll take that to the legislature. But I'm not going to make that decision without their input and direction.
In a fundamental way, I support both the other individuals' answers here, but I'd like to take it a little farther. If you've become elected to that position and there's a problem in the election process, I'm not sure that you're going to complain about it. I'd rather hear from the voters. I'd rather hear from the people challenging if this is a cumbersome issue. If this is an issue that is stopping the process of voting and the people's voices being heard, then we need to do something about it. But I'm not quite sure that that would be raised by the people holding those offices because they already won it. I think we need to listen to a much bigger audience on that. So yeah, I'm open-minded to it, but I need information from more than just the sources that have gotten the positions. I need information from the sources that haven't gotten the positions. I need information from the sources that are engaged in those campaigns and engaged in the cause and effect of that position. And if that's an issue, we need to address it, period.
Thank you. We'll do one more question off of our generic list unless someone from the audience has one that I can. Okay. Local government funding. Your thoughts on this issue? The Wyoming Association of Municipalities have presented a plan of their own over the years. Wyoming County Commissioners Association has submitted ideas. What would be your thoughts on this issue? Empower, change the split in the money for continuing to do this, or any other thoughts? And Leanne, I'll start with you.
Well, I do attend the Riverside Town Council meetings and follow the budgeting pretty closely in both in Canton and Riverside. There's two funding streams that come to those towns, and it's always a big unknown of what they're going to get each year. There has been some discussion about allowing municipalities to do some of their own fundraising or raising of funds, I guess, not fundraising, but to better budget, at least have an even keel of budgeting. I would look closely at what the recommendations have been from WAM and from Carbon County Commissioners and take those into consideration as to what our 10 municipalities are looking at in this particular district. It's difficult, and a lot of our municipalities are facing the same challenges of trying to pay for law enforcement, trying to pay for fire service, their sewer systems. Riverside just spent about $1.4 million on upgrading their sewer system for a town of 52. It doesn't reduce the costs. And so I'd like to look at something that could even out their funding and make a better budget.
Julie?
All right, you're gonna have to make this one stop flashing at you. I live in Rock River. Oh, geez, that was a lot louder. I'm sorry I made you jump. Kind of loud anyway. You should hear me when I'm yelling for kids. I'm joking.
At least they hear you on the floor.
They do. Rock River had, from 2017 back to 2014, over a $400,000 surplus every year. Over, but they couldn't figure out how to spend. They were actually asking during meetings if anyone had any ideas. They almost paved our streets. Not kidding. Then we have towns that fight for every single dime and every single penny in the same district, sometimes in the same county, almost always in the same county, that can't get by. It's ridiculous. It's unacceptable. We need transparency. We need to know where that money is going. We need to make sure for every dollar that's being spent, we're getting a dollar's worth of services, period. It's not being done. We're not held accountable in the state, and it's ridiculous. Everything that stands in the way of being transparent is an excuse. I have yet to heard a viable, material reason it can't be done. None. If we have that transparency, we can look at our budgeting across the state, across county lines, across municipalities, across towns, to redisperse funding in a more needed way. There shouldn't be towns starving themselves out, not being able to afford their fire districts. Not Wyoming, come on, that's lives. It's not just homes and livelihoods, that's people's lives. It's everything they work for. They should have the money to fund that. And there's so many municipalities that don't. Whereas the town I live in wanted to pave our streets. It's not right. It needs to be dealt with. This is the base of the problem. This is our cause and effect. This is where we have to start. It's not being addressed because it's unpopular, especially in the legislature. They don't want to come home and answer to their constituents why they voted for every town and municipality to tell everyone where their money's going, but it's taxpayer money, and we all have the right to know where our money is. Yes, ma'am.
Jerry.
We have 99 towns and 23 counties in Wyoming, and out of the general budget, we have been subsidizing them to the tune of about $104 million. Is that about right? $105 million. And every year it's always up, whether or not that's going to happen or not. So it's really difficult for the towns and counties to budget, not knowing whether that money is there or not. So I think we have to start moving towards some kind of a system where the towns and counties can generate their own money by a vote of the people, of course. I think that's the best decisions are made locally, not in Cheyenne and not in Washington, D.C. So we got to make sure that we have some mechanism in place so that we can allow that, because who knows how many more years we're going to be able to come up with that $105 million, and that's essential for a lot of towns. And the towns in House District 47, the biggest town in the House of Representatives in that District 47 is Saratoga. So that tells you, what do we have, 11, 12, 13 towns or something like that. If you count some, unincorporated towns, we have like Farson and Eden, of course. But it definitely is a problem, and it adds a lot of uncertainty. Having been on the other end of that from the town council and from the county commissioner standpoint, I know how difficult that is to try to manage all your budgeting. And a lot of our towns have lost essential services like police protection, for example. And we just have to do a better job of providing funds for that. When we did wiped out the sales tax on food and promised to backfill it and then didn't, that was really a setback. And I think that's goes to the credibility of the state legislature. It happened before I got in there, but still we have to take responsibility for that because we still haven't backfilled that money. So we've got to find a way of doing that. Hopefully the online sales thing will help some of that too.
Thank you. Thank you very much, all of you, for coming. We appreciate your time and efforts, and wish you the very best in your campaign. And we will have the town council people move over to these seats over here, since Diane Davis has been
I just want to say, I brought some cards that have contact information. If anyone thinks of a question later, if they want to send me an email, please do.
I'll build on that, so did I.
Sorry.
We have the Saratoga Town Council candidate up next. Okay, is that better? Great, thank you. So what I was just saying is we have the Saratoga Town Council candidates up next. We will follow the same format that we just did. A note, to let you guys know about Danny Bureau, did withdraw his candidacy for town council. So, he is obviously not here tonight. So with that, let's get started and ask each candidate to take up to 3 minutes to tell us a little bit about themselves and more importantly, why they are running. So I will start down on the end with Chia.
Good evening. I am Chia Valdez Schwartz, third generation Wyoming native. My mom was born in Jibo, which is an old coal mining town. She was a coal mining daughter. My dad in Riverton, grew up in Riverton. 2010, fell in love with Saratoga. And last year, my daughter, last year my prayers were answered and my daughter fell in love with Saratoga and chose to invest here, bought the little RV park. And that's probably one of the basic reasons I'm running, because my daughter, my granddaughter, my family are, instead of investing in someplace like Denver, Colorado, they decided to come here. And I don't think this microphone is working. Is it? It's better now. That being said, the reason for me, again, wanting to run for council is to have some skin in the game in terms of my family and the growth that's going to be happening to us here. And that we want controlled growth. And I ask for your vote. I would be very honored and humbled if you sent me to the town council. Thank you.
My name is John Nelson. My love affair with Saratoga, as you might say, started about 10 years ago. I was working for a contractor and we did the water project here in Saratoga across the river and put the ball field in out east of town. That was in 2008. In 2009, I was sent back up to manage a project in encampment, did a water and sewer replacement there. And over the course of that year and a half, I lived most of the time here in Saratoga and got to know a lot of folks in the community, and started getting involved with things like cherry races and wood choppers. And, even after the project was over, it was my Saratoga hometown, so I was coming up here as much as I could. And then a couple years ago, decided to make the leap and move up. Started a business a year and a half ago here in Saratoga, and have gotten involved with the planning commission, in the Lions Club, and on the Saratoga Gun Club board of directors. And I think the reason that I'm running would be primarily my involvement with the planning commission. It has been an appointed position. It's been great to be involved with some of the discussions and things with planning. But it's been somewhat frustrating at times to not have a vote. We make recommendations to the council. And so when people say, how come you can or can't do that? We get to say, well, we're elected officials. So really then when Richard Raymer decided he wasn't going to rerun for his position, for those of you that know, Richard's been really heavily involved with water and sewer infrastructure, airport, and I think that's going to leave a bit of a deficit on the council, and one that matched my skill sets very well, being in construction and being familiar with capital projects. And so I saw an opportunity to be able to be involved on another level and be able to contribute in a different way. I'm really excited about this opportunity, and hope I have your support. Thank you.
There's a green light on this one. I'll stay sitting down. John's a little ambitious here. So, my name is Bob Keel. I lived in Saratoga for over 2 years now. By profession, I'm a physician assistant. A lot of you probably know me that way. I grew up in a small community just like this in Utah. So when I came out here, me and my wife, we instantly fell in love, and we want to make this our home for a long time. I joke with my patients, I say we're here at least until my youngest graduates high school, and he's 14 months old. So we're planning on being here a while. We plan on being active in the community and helping out where we can. While I was in Utah, I did participate in the small town local politics. I was both a county delegate and a state delegate for the Republican convention there. It's a caucus system. It's a little confusing. I can explain that later if you want. Things that really matter to me are providing services for the community in a responsible fashion, where we're taking the money that we get and using it responsibly, balancing our budgets, and making sure that we have money to provide adequate police force, adequate fire service, adequate EMS. Being a medical professional, I have a passion towards good quality healthcare, and I feel like that my experience could provide some insightful insights, I guess, insights on the city council or county council and how we can provide the healthcare we need. I personally have volunteered with the Schwenn's ambulance service, and I know what it's like to be in the back of an ambulance in a critical situation, and I look forward to making sure they continue to have the resources they need, the volunteers they need, so that we can have that adequate health care. I also look forward to helping Saratoga grow with things that are going on already. I think we would be fools to say the town council hasn't done a good job so far, but I think we'd also be fools to say there's not improvement to be made. There always is, and I'm excited to be a part of that. I'm excited to bring my experience to that and help out where I can.
Yes, my name is Will Faust. I am currently serving on the town council. As many of you might know, I have built my business here in town. My wife and I moved here in 2003, so we've been here about 15 years. We're raising a family here, and we look forward to being here for the rest of our lives. The biggest things that I want to focus on, and a lot of this has to do with, what I originally ran on, was number one, supporting small businesses in our community. They're the lifeblood, they're the folks that, along with other citizens, continue to donate money to events, to other causes in the community. But I think the best way to do that is by making sure that we have the critical infrastructure for town in as good a shape. The last 3.5 years, we've done some great projects, including street refinishing, going up and down the hill. Thanks to John's help here, the sewer lagoon improvement project, that's been a very good thing, getting that up to date. We're just about to start the level 1 water study, and then we've been implementing strategies from our municipal master plan. And so, I think that there's a lot of work that can still be done. We've had some tough times with declining revenues from our budget standpoint. We've weathered that. I think there's still some efficiencies that can be made there, but these things take time. I think it was talked about earlier on sometimes just not knowing what money's coming in at the beginning of each year, and that makes things difficult. I do serve on the planning commission. I've really enjoyed that. It's not an easy job. You tend to get to tackle a lot of pretty hot topic, contentious issues. I do have past experience on the Water and Sewer Joint Powers Board. But some of the things we've done on the planning commission that I think have been really good for town. The planning and development ordinance has been rewritten. That gives us a lot of flexibility as a town to help come up with creative ideas on how development can happen. We're not just tied to our existing zoning. We've spent a lot of time here in the last year discussing mobile home park permitting processes and RV park permitting processes in up until we get, hopefully, this ordinance passed in the next month and a half. There's been no real legal way to permit those types of developments. And so, I think there's a lot of work to be done on the planning and zoning side of things. I look forward to continuing that, and really appreciate your vote, and it's really been honored to serve as your council person over the last 3.5 years. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Steve Hytrack. I'm running for town council. I was kind of urged by some friends. I never thought of myself as running for town council, but I never thought about it. I said, why not? I have some background in medicine. I'm a registered nurse. Back up a little bit. I'm originally from Rhode Island. I graduated from nursing school in 1979 as a licensed practical nurse. And then I jumped in a truck and I traveled all over the United States, moving furniture professionally with my husband at the time. So when I arrived here, I was kind of like a tourist. We knew we wanted to come to Wyoming. We knew we wanted to raise a family up here and start here. So that's what we did. And we landed in Rollins. I worked at the hospital there for a long time. I worked in med-surg, and I delivered babies was my last career there, and I really enjoyed that. I also enjoyed taking care of elderly, so when obstetrics closed back in, oh gosh, I can't remember what year it was, I moved on, and I have been chosen to go on a scholarship back in 1985 to the Rollins Hospital to become an RN. I was part of the SEND program. They empowered the staff there to go back to school for retention. I'm sure you know the healthcare story here. Doctors and nurses are hard to find, and retaining them is even harder. So I have an extensive background, but then I moved on to the home health business, and I ran that from 1989 until 97 when the hospital decided to open home health as well and duplicate services. So duplication of services is an issue for me. I know that in a small town, it's very important that healthcare is looked at from a numbers standpoint, and assessments are done appropriately before we provide health care, so that not only we can provide the best care, but services that will last and stay in Carbon County. I I see struggles now with healthcare in our area. I see the city working towards helping local nursing homes. I think that's very important. I not only think we should have tertiary stair-step care, but we should do it effectively and within realistic goals. So aging in place, of course, is my concern. Safety of our elderly has always been my concern, was my business for a very long time. I closed my business when the hospital decided to do it. I said that. It's difficult. I still love being a nurse. I love being a nurse. I was a practicing nurse for 30 years. So then I moved on to tourism, and I most recently sat on the Carbon County Visitors Council for my 2 term limits. It is very rewarding, and I understand now the power of tourism. It is the second largest industry in our area, in our state, and 10% of that tourism dollar goes back. So I think I'm a worthy candidate on a lot of levels. I'm able, I'm into businesses, and I think I have some things to bring to the table. Thank you very much.
All right, so we'll start out with questions from the audience. If anyone has any questions, we will reduce our response time to 2 minutes.
This is for all the candidates. Obviously, recently in the news, and I know we have 2 medical people at the table, the Saratoga Care Center has come under some, for lack of a better word, questioning and I'm wondering, what role do you see the city of Saratoga playing in providing assistance to keep the care center viable?
Okay, let's start down on this end. We'll start with Kim.
Well, throughout my 38 years here in Carbon County, I've seen a lot of entities come and go in healthcare. I've seen a lot of services that we still need in healthcare. I think I was at the city council meeting talking about the visitors council plan for the nursing home. The administrator came to the city and asked for their help. I'm not sure that it's the city council's place. I'm sure it's not I'm not sure it's the city's place or the town's place to support in dollars, but support in other ways, of course, is critical. We do need a nursing home. We do need a medical facility. I would like to see a bit of assisted living and a certain affordable housing for elderly. So those are all critical issues, and I think we need to speak and be at the table, certainly discuss, and that's my understanding. That the medical corporate rents the space, the clinic rents space, but the nursing home is privately owned.
Can you guys hear okay in the back?
So I think this is an extremely important issue, one that I've been working on pretty hard for about the last 6-7 months. There were some real issues with the budget, with the senior center. We've met with them multiple times, Steve, and you know, I think I would agree with Kim in that, you know, us getting directly involved financially with the private business there, you know, in that case, doesn't make a lot of sense. But as a leader in the community and someone who has a lot of contacts, you know, the role that I played was to make sure that we were putting those people in contact with the right people. They were able to secure private funding. I know Mark Passignelli, I'm sure I'm butchering his name, but has done a fantastic job getting their budget and cost control, those sorts of things, to where, you know, in speaking with Carl Ruth from HMS Services, their financials are on a very solid footing now. And so it was very tenuous at one point in time in the not so distant future. But moving forward, we're engaging in talks with several different entities on looking at what sort of services can we improve. Elder care is something that's extremely important. Being able to age in place, you know, again, it depends on market numbers, but what I would like to see and what I would support would be an expanded services for elder care, not only the nursing home care, but also looking at some assisted living options. And really, I think making sure that our medical unit has, that we're working together as one community, because without all of whether it's the nursing home, the clinic, the therapy center, doctors, dentists, everybody needs to work together, pharmacy, that sort of thing. So.
I think the nursing home here is not only important for the residents that currently are there, but also for the people that work there. I think the last number I heard was 55 people were employed by the nursing home, and that's a big part of our community. And I think these two are exactly right. We, as a city council, have a fine line to walk as far as letting them as a private business run their own business, but at the same time, we have influence, we have contacts. Each of us bring our own experience to the table as a city council or town council, and we have to use those to be creative in ways that we can make sure that these resources stay, like the nursing home, the clinic, the dentist, the ophthalmologist. And so I think working with Mark and the other people involved in the nursing home to find ways to not only bring in the residents that are needed to make ends meet financially, but also to be creative enough to make this work in a small town, because owning a care center in Saratoga, Wyoming is a lot different than owning a care center even in Rawlins, Wyoming. And so I think working with them, supporting them any way we can, at the same time allowing them to run their business, because it is their business.
To make an engineering rocket to medical professional. Talk about medicine. What everybody said is, I'm in agreement with all of them. Having care here at all levels, whether it's the pharmacy or the assisted living center, the nursing home, is extremely important to this community, not just Saratoga, but also this valley, and I think it's a real asset to have it here. So I would look to work with the business owners up there to ensure that their model is sustainable. There's been some talk about perhaps expanding the service in order to make it more viable. Healthcare and how you are reimbursed for healthcare services is incredibly complicated. But the way I understand it is there may be some opportunities to expand services and therefore couple and have some synergy between different divisions. And I think that's something we're moving into. As far as, what the town's role would be, going back to the question, it is a business, and I think the town council ought to stay out of how you run that business. However, when it comes to facilities, I think there are things that we can do to make sure that the appropriate facilities are in place and ensure that, like Will said, I think it was Will, about aging places is a term that I feel like it sounds kind of cold, but I mean it's incredibly important to not have to leave the town where you spent your life and have all your friends and your whole network, your community, to have to go someplace else to proper care. So that would be my primary goal in that.
I concur with everyone that has spoken. The bottom line to all this, and what everyone is wanting to know about, is what's going to happen to the nursing home. And this speaks to accountability. It speaks to transparency, and we're talking about here the critical access hospital, which everyone is. I mean, this is the term that's being floated around right now, and the town, to go back to your question, whoever question that was, the town will have something to do with it in terms of this model that they're that is going to be brought forth, the town will have something to do with it. And that's what it's all about, is being able to be active and involved in the community on the ground level and keeping our healthcare. We don't have a town if we don't have healthcare. There's people that would move here if we had better healthcare. People from Colorado that would move here specifically, retired people that have revenue and bring revenue, they would be joining us as well. I don't know if that answers your question.
Okay, thank you. We have another question.
A follow-up question, along that line. There's been some discussion about the problems you're having, that you're having with keeping the ambulance service going. It wasn't mentioned in this discussion, along with the primary hospital model. But how are we doing on that ambulance, keeping the ambulance functioning, and what are your opinions on that?
Let's start with Will.
You can have the best healthcare in the world, but if you can't get there when you need it, you've got real issues. And so, there's been a lot in the news with regards to TWIMS in the past couple of years. There's been some major reshuffling on the boards, and I think it's very positive to see that board is now functioning well, or better than it was. I think Chia mentioned it, any sort of critical access hospital, that would be something we would want to look at to say, okay, for our valley, if a facility like that was ever available, part of the discussions have been the ambulance service needs to somehow be a part of that. And it would give us maybe a little bit more local control over the ambulance and have a little bit more say in what happens in our valley. But again, to go back to kind of some of the things that have been happening, it's not something that I've been working very closely on, but we're starting to see some forward progress, and it comes back to funding. How do you fund these things? And when you look at sales tax revenue that's been declining every single year for the past 3.5 years, we're trying, you can only stretch $1 so far. And so I think there's a question asked to the Senate and congressional candidates in potentially trying to get more control over revenue from a local standpoint. And right now we have very little control outside of raising your water bill or your mosquito abatement fee. And that's really the power that we have as a community. And so I think as we move forward on improving medical services within the valley, that's got to be a very important consideration.
So I think it all comes down to what Will said. It's a money standpoint. It's what we do with the money. And so I think it's really important that the funds that we do get, we have to be very good stewards of that money. And then it comes to priorities. We have to have our priorities set to where we make the SWEMs that an important part of what we do. And involving that committee, being a part of that committee also helps a lot, because you're there talking with people that are in those situations, that are volunteering, and seeing what they need and how we can help. And then that you have to take that back to the city council, and that's where you work on adjusting your priorities so that we have that important resource. As a medical professional, I started as a EMT basic in Utah, and it's not easy, and to be in that situation, let alone being in that situation, you don't have the resources you need. So part of the critical access hospital discussion that's been going on, you get a lot more funding from the federal government and reimbursements, and a lot of that stuff can be used towards increasing the funding for SWIMs and improving the staffing and the equipment that we have. But until that happens, we have to tackle it with what it is, and we have to get real with ourselves and decide where the priorities are, how we're gonna balance our budget, and how we're gonna make Schweppes to continue to be an important part of our community and provide that important resource.
So SWIMS is an issue that's larger than just town of Saratoga, right? I mean, this involves Carbon County, Hannah, Pleasantville, Elk Mountain, Canton, Riverside, as far as SWIMS district. So one thing that I've done over the last year is go to as many COG meetings as possible. That's Carbon County Council of Governments. And it's a great way to be able to exchange ideas and have conversations with other council members, mayors, and representatives from those municipalities. So I think, does the Saratoga Town Council have a big role to play in what happens with our ambulance service? Absolutely. But it's also a conversation that can be had with the other municipalities to figure out how we can work together to pool our resources to make sure that stays viable. And then going back to the expanded care, these guys touched on it, with some additional federal funding that could come from offering more services, that could be used to ensure that insurance remains viable.
I was with John at the COG meeting the other day. I was really impressed with that. Well, the Carbon County Council of Governance, and all the people there, everyone that does this, and we're up here, is all about serving, and it's not easy. It is not easy to be up here, and it's not easy to put yourself forward and to serve. That being said, the ambulance is critical and it's essential.
Well, I tend to agree with everybody here. I know I come in city council for looking at these issues because healthcare, of course, is dear to me, and it will be, it's critical to any town, any city. But I think it's also important that we look towards the lives. I think with the mining and industry and revenues changing across the state, one of the biggest reasons I live in Saratoga is because you all always think outside the box. You always come up with answers in alternative ways. And I think Saratoga's always shined that way, not just in healthcare, not just in tourism, but in ways to fix blighted areas. I can mention all of that too. So I'm pretty sure we can come to a conclusion and fix this access, continuation of healthcare. And as far as nursing home closing, back in the day, they said that obstetrics would never close, but it did. So never say never, never think it's not going to happen to you. And we had a high mortality rate skidding across the winters with pregnant mamas, going all the way to Laramie. So we can't wait for these critical times. We have to think ahead. We have to think ahead. And I think as a person who owned a for-profit agency, to think medicine is not big business is crazy, because it is. Doctors and nurses and healthcare professionals have been making money for a long time doing what they do. Competition makes quality services. And I think we need to think outside the box and not continue to think on a volunteer basis for those EMTs that put their life on the line going across those roads themselves to go and help others. To volunteer and leave your job and take a pay cut or whatever, to think that they're volunteering because they have nothing better to do. One is because they're committed. Commitment is a big thing, but I think they should be paid.
Cassie, Josh has a Facebook question here that's probably worth about a minute apiece.
Okay.
It's a follow-up to that same subject.
Okay, so on a follow-up, John Ziegler asks, what should the council do to get those that run on the ambulance more interested in signing up for shifts?
Pay them.
Let me do that with a minute for the whole council.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think something that's important is potentially looking at better access sure that, you know, and I know I've talked to John about it a little bit, that there are different levels of EMT service, and trying to, you know, recruit on the lower end of things and then move those people up, like any organization that wants to sustain itself. You know, we've got a lot of great volunteers. How can we give them access to the tools and the information they need, further their careers? You get the advancements, you make a little bit more money, you know, maybe you can make a career out of it.
So having volunteered for SWIMS, I think one of the important issues would be to recruit more volunteers. Sometimes when you're the only one that's going on call several times in a row, it kind of wears you down, and it makes it harder for you to, you know, justify leaving your family that one last time. So I think increasing the numbers would help. Now the question is, how do we do that? I think by, I think Will hit on it just perfectly. I participated last year in helping train EMT basic class, and I think by offering these courses and this training, and not just the basic, but doing this continuing education that they do on a monthly basis, and finding ways to get those people to stay engaged and keep the number of volunteers is going to be really important, because if you don't feel comfortable, you're not going to go. If you're burned out, you're not going to go. We're not getting paid right now, and that might not change for a little while. So I think those are two of the biggest things we can do, is increase the amount of volunteers, increase the quality and type of training.
I'll just add that real quick. I was at a encampment council meeting a few months ago. They were talking about SWIMS, and one of the things that I found interesting was the changing landscape of that training. Apparently, you could probably speak to this, Bob, you used to be able to drive the ambulance if you weren't an EMT. But now, to be in the ambulance in any capacity, you have to be trained. Is that, well, you know, we need to make sure, to that point, that, whether it's volunteer or a paid employee, that, you know, the rigorous training, they have to go through the continuing education, the updates to their licenses and all that is provided. And I think that's part of the reason that we've seen so many people drop off the volunteer rosters, because, you know, they're trying to balance this volunteer position with a job, and you need to go to Casper to get training every 3 months on top of that. It just, we need to help make sure that they can afford to do that and they're providing training.
Thank you, Bob, for your service. That is a huge thing. And again, how do you motivate anybody to do anything if they don't want to do it? I mean, how do you motivate someone to become a candidate to town council? It just is in your heart. It's something that is in your heart and your soul, and you do it. And it always helps when you know, pay someone also. Revenue and generating revenue. As Kim said, you know, medical is a huge a revenue generator. So how do we figure that out? The bottom line is inspiring people to serve. How do you do that? Again, it's within your heart and your soul. Thank you.
Well, I think I spoke to the issue of pay. But I also want to speak to volunteerism and how to motivate young folks. Years ago in Rollins, they had a CNA program right in the high school. Sue Mahoney did taught the CNAs right out of high school. And I'm proud to say, you know, those CNAs came and joined me in my home health business. I went on to training as home health aides. And several of them went on to become nurses, and still are nurses today. I think if we infiltrate our high schools and our young people and motivate them and get our kids involved in volunteerism, I have with my children, and they volunteer today. I'm proud that they've grown up with that same, it's not something you just wake up someday, one day and say, I think I'm going to volunteer. I think it starts at home. It starts with helping your neighbor shovel their work and walk in the winter if they're elderly. It starts with teaching your children how to have a lemonade stand and donate the money back to your local nursing home. Volunteerism can be worked on in many, many ways.
Okay, we do have a follow-up question at the end, Sue. We've spent a lot of time on healthcare and emergency services. Maybe after this question, direct maybe to some of the other areas of interest. So let's go ahead and, a follow-up question? Okay.
It's actually a different question. It's a different question.
My name's Byron Markers. As we were talking about this, just share with you that I don't live in the city limits. But this Schwinn's issue is an important issue, not just for city limits, but also for our county. One of the ladies that used to work at Schwinn, somebody I grew up with, and she shared with me that she got burned out, and I think you guys touched on some of that. This is just a comment, it's not necessarily a question, but several years back, my two teenage daughters got in a rollover accident on County Road near our home. They were both fine, they were both wearing their seatbelts. The vehicle was totaled, and the ambulance did come and pick up both our girls. Our automobile insurance company was billed $3,500 per person, and they took both our girls, so they were billed $7,000. And so I think as councilmen and women, as you move forward, and we're talking about business modeling and running businesses, I think that's something to be thinking about. With Schwinn's working with Corporate Medical Center, and of course, the Memorial Hospital of Carbon County, just exactly where, did that $7,000 go for a trip to the ER? We're talking fuel maintenance, those that are with them in the hospital. Just something to think about when we're talking about money and funding. Thank you.
And different people have come and spoken to members of the community, and they've said there's money, there's grants for this, there's grants for that. I'm just curious, and I'm not sure anyone here can answer that, because there's only one person on the council here, so maybe you'll have to answer that, but maybe other people have ideas. Who is writing the grants for the city of Saratoga?
So one of the most recent grants that has been provided to the town, actually a little complicated. The state is funding a water study, a level 1 master plan update, which is funded through the Wyoming Water Development Commission. About a year ago, we have a leaky tank over here, and some other issues that deserve some attention and some funding. And to get into the cycle of Wyoming Water Development funding, you have to start with the level 1. And to be awarded the level 1, you have to demonstrate need. And so a year ago, I went out to the well field and took some water samples and worked with a software company out of Colorado to write a program to extract a bunch of data from the town's SCADA system. I did that with my own money to make sure that the town had the data to provide to Wyoming Water Development to get that grant. There are several opportunities out there, but that's an example of some initiatives that we need to do.
Did it as a business now, not the city?
Well,
Question is, how does that work?
Sure, and so in a lot of areas, we do rely on, whether it's engineering firms, folks like John Nelson, something like that, to go after those funds. I know Richard's worked very hard with the engineers who handle our airport and finding federal dollars there, state dollars to match, to help defray some of those costs. One of the things that we're looking at, and we've talked about, I think, medical services enough, but that is something that we want to make sure that whenever we're partnering with somebody, I'm not a professional grant writer, I don't have the time to write grants, but that we're partnering with somebody who knows their specialty and knows how to navigate those waters and to go find that fund. So I think that's really important as we align ourselves as a council with different entities, be they public or private, is that we're getting the support that we need to go after those dollars.
I haven't actually given grants or written grants to the city, but I'm with Carbon County Visitors Council, who's given grants to organizations within town, like Tokyo, Chariot, Races, Enjoying, Steinman Hub, whole plethora, whole plethora of events. So all the fun stuff does come from the Carbon County Visitors Council, the grants that they provide, if it's tourism related.
Well, this is more like a comment. So we talk about grants and funding and things that are happening for the city, and then what happens then when it's awarded to an out-of-stater or an out-of-towner, and it didn't go, and it wasn't, we're talking about water and grants, and this man's saving the town a lot of money here. So you have all these wonderful things happen, and then someone from, I don't know, they recommend to a council member or to the board or the water sewer people that they're supposed to go somewhere else, like out of state. So how does that work then? So that was more like a comment about grants, and so yeah, we can have all kinds of grants, but if we don't keep the money and the eye on the ball here, then the grants don't help anything.
Okay, is there another question? Okay. There's a couple of them out there too. Roger?
This question is actually for Councilman Faust. 4 years ago, one of your platforms was a big town out of litigation with a mess above the ditch along the highway. You know exactly what I'm talking about. As far as I can see, it's way worse than it was 4 years ago.
Great question, Roger. And in many situations, once attorneys and judges and those things get involved, it really does tie our hands as a council as to what we can and can't do to, exacerbate the problem. We did have a change in judge who was making a determination on the case. It's not something that, it is something that we've discussed, I think. There hasn't been a lot that I see as an opportunity that we can say, okay, yes, we can go do this and we can make it stop. I know it's a horrible answer, but the reality is it's in the court's hands. I think it's supposed to be heard sometime this fall. If that happens, I'll believe it when I see it. And hopefully we can get a definitive ruling one way or the other so that we can move on. Quit spending money on something like that.
That was a question specifically for Will, but if anyone else would like to comment on that, please have your knowledge. Definitely open it up to you. No? Okay. Jason, Mr. Trot.
Well, I chased an ambulance many, many miles. And it was always my experience that when the stuff hit the fan, you had more volunteers and you wouldn't know what to do with it. I'm afraid that we've lost that. It's something that you just don't see. I think we've overtrained or over-required some of our requirements. Now, an ambulance won't even leave the barn until there's two attendants and a driver. Now, at 2:30 in the morning in the blizzard, you haven't got time to sit around and wait for somebody to show up. And sometimes you just gotta do what you gotta do. If I've had to do it, a lot of you knew Kenmore McBride, Dr. Link. One time got a hold of Kendall and I, And he says, I don't know how you guys do it. He says, most of these people should be dead. You must drive like hell. But, you know, it's something that I think we've lost. The volunteer thing. Everybody wants every dollar they can get their hands on, and I can understand it because I could use a few extra ones myself. But when somebody's laying on the ground bleeding, or you got a car wrapped around somebody's throat, you haven't got time to think about that. And I think we need to find a way to get this volunteerism back. To get people to say, well, you need some help, give me a call. And whether he's qualified or not. You know, it doesn't take a whole hell of a lot of training to be able to put a bandage on a guy's throat if he's choking to death or whatever. You know, you don't have to be a surgeon. All you got to do is be willing. Willing to get your hands dirty and willing to take it over. See you.
All right, we have another question back in the back corner.
Well, we've attacked the healthcare issue. There's a lot of concerns for Saratoga, and I'm sure that this might be a part. There should be one concern for each one of you that possibly you would attack first when you get to the council. And I can think 5 or 10, but each one of you, what's your main concern that you would like to see happen while you're there?
That's a great question. Let's start with John.
I think based on my experience with infrastructure, being a civil engineer, a really good fit for me would be infrastructure and public works. Working with our public works director, former on the water and streets department to ensure that we're being as cost effective as we can while still doing what we need to do to maintain our infrastructure, improve our streets. You know, it's kind of a softball for an engineer to say he'll tackle infrastructure, but you know, there are a lot of issues out there. I've been really involved on the planning and zoning side over the last year and a half. But I think the infrastructure and the public works is a pretty good fit.
Chia. Mine is local economic development. Generating revenue. Revenue solves everything. We have, and my vision for the economic development is, right now I'm involved with getting Wyoming beef into Asia. Also, Wyoming made products into Asia. It's a huge market there, and we have so many talented people in Wyoming that do from everything from the crafts to visual arts. And this whole Asia market, they want Wyoming products. They want the Bucky Bronco. They want all of that. So for me, it's local economic development.
Bob?
So the reason why I can't hear in the way, the reason why I want to stay is we have a quality of life out here in Saratoga. And I think my number 1 priority is to bring to this town council the ability to maintain our way of life, to manage our budgets, and to you know, maintain those services so that we can continue to enjoy our life out here in Wyoming, specifically in Saratoga. I think that all comes from managing our money right, supporting our police officers, our volunteer firefighters that have been left out of this a little bit, SWAMs, and then public works. I think it all starts there, you know, being financially responsible and maintaining the way of life that we have out here and moving the town forward.
And I know we've talked about it a lot tonight. You mentioned it, the medical care, but over the past 6 months, that's the one thing that has consumed most of my time. It's kept me up a lot over the last few months. And, you know, I think we're getting close to getting the ball rolling on really seeing some real traction and improvement in the services for the future. And so not only improving the quality of the care that we have right now, but expanded services that will allow more people to stay here in Saratoga, potentially attract the right people to town. We're talking good jobs, you know, benefited jobs that you know should bring more families to fill our schools. You know, the more kids, the more younger families you have, the more sustainable the community is. All the while allowing the folks that have made this place so great over the number of years to you know live their life with dignity here in Saratoga.
Well, I tend to agree with all of you involved. I moved here for quality of life as well. And health and safety of our community is certainly of the utmost importance. And with that comes, of course, aging in place, affordable housing, take care of our children, and drug abuse. And I think we have a serious issue with that too. I'd like to tell from a tourism standpoint that the beauty of Saratoga is no elevators, no stoplights, no graffiti in any bathrooms. I think that's outstanding. That speaks to how safe our community is. And I think balanced growth is really important because the ambulance needs to keep up with, water needs to keep up with, the impact of tourism and the trash that comes with it, game and fish under trails. And I do the trade shows outside of Saratoga with the tourism committee and bringing them in from Denver and Utah, and I'm hearing they have no place left to go for outdoor activities. I think we should certainly maintain what we have before we make it bigger.
Is there another question for you guys?
I got kind of a two-part question here, but one of the things that was mentioned was about the money and the budget, and Mr. Faust talked about the fact that about the only way we can raise money is by raising the water bill. One of the most important things about one of the state statutes is that your utility funds are self-supporting. And it's something that, as council members, you're going to have to learn these things. By self-supporting, is your water, your sewer, this type of thing is self-supporting. You can put money into it, but you cannot take money out of it for something other than water and sewer. The other thing that has come up, and we talk about new ordinances, and there's been some very elaborate ones written lately. One of the things that's bothered me most about them is the fact that on the bottom line, when you write a new ordinance, two of the most important people that should be involved in it are the people that are going to have to enforce it, and you need to have enforcement within your ordinance. And I haven't noticed that, like the chief of police being asked about whether or not he can enforce this, nor have I seen an ordinance being presented to him or to your city judge. And I think those two people are very important because it's not going to do you any good to have an elaborate ordinance unless you can enforce it.
Okay. Let's start with Will.
No, Glee, I think you bring up a couple good points. You know, and I'll be the first to admit that there has been a disconnect in you know some of the ordinance enforcement. That is nothing new. You know, when you start looking at a nuisance ordinance that was passed in maybe 1991, I think, and then we're asked to do something about it. You know, half of the room says, well, you know, nobody's enforcing the past, why now? And so I think, and we have had conversations behind the scenes with Rob, who's the chief of police, and are working on you know implementing some strategies and some operating procedures to say, okay, how do we tackle this? You know, how do we make sure that there's enforcement? The reality is we don't have the budget to pay Dan Farron full time to run around town and check to make sure that everybody's following every single one of all of the municipal ordinances. And, you know, we're lucky that we live in a town where a lot of folks come to us and ask, okay, hey, we're gonna try to do this. Can we make it work? The reality is a lot of Title 18 is woefully out of date, and that's what we've been trying to update.
I think this is where accountability comes into effect with the town council. Not only do we need to do our best to try and make things work for the city, but for the town, we also have to take into account, you know, is this something that's going to work? Is it worth our time putting in our efforts into this? And what's the impact going to be on not just a certain handful of citizens, but everybody in the town? And so, you know, I think that that's just an ongoing situation that is something you're going to have to sit down with at every town council meeting. Everything you do is, you know, is this something that's worth the time that we're putting into it? Is it something that we can enforce? And is this something that's going to move us forward? And, you know, I would lie if I had all the answers to this one. I haven't been on the town council here. And so that's where, you know, having an outsider perspective of, you know, I've been here, I've done the building codes and stuff like that. And you just have to hold yourself accountable as a town council doing those things.
So the first part of your question about self-supporting funds and the funding that is,
No, I can make the comment that the utility funds
Right.
are self-supporting, we can't take money out of it, we're going to big.
correct. And going back to the comment before about grants is, you know, a big component of grant funding is matching funds. So being able to make sure we have the reserve accounts, not just to pay for capital improvements and maintenance, but also ensuring that we then have those matching funds to go out and get grants, and, you know, zero interest loans or low interest loans, but is critically important. Yes. Okay, great. We'll mention, you know, we're raising water rates. I think there's some other, you know, creative ways to maybe do that doesn't come out of everybody's pocket. You know, if we talk about tap fees, for example, that would be on new homes. So kind of piggybacking off of growth and not out of the pockets of folks that are already here would be one opportunity I'd like to look at in terms of what the tap fees are.
I guess when we're talking about accountability, then how about having the town council meetings streamed live, just like we're doing this right now? So everyone is, what's that?
Sorry,
Oh.
Saratoga's been there, done that, and it turned into a nasty sideshow. It was ugly. Talk to Dick Peru. Sorry.
I would welcome it.
Live, streaming live. What about, like, for example, when folks are, hey, come on now. When it's freezing cold, 10 below zero, then you don't have to come to the town council meeting. You can just go online or whatever, and you can interact and be, what? Why?
It's okay. Talk to Dick Peru. Yeah. It's a long story. Maybe it'll be better this time. It'll be nice.
You have to try it.
Right.
Hello?
I think existing ordinances should be enforced.
All right, we have a question from Kate.
Sorry. We've been talking a lot about accountability and funding and all of these very responsible issues. And I'm sorry, you guys, but people have been raising money for Tyler Pickett Park for a really long time. I believe at one point we had one of the town's WildStar accounts set aside to hold it. There were accounting issues trying to account for how much money had been raised and where it was. And we at least got the sign taken down since progress is so slow. But what's up with Tyler Pickett Park and what do we need to do about it? Everybody.
Bob, would you like to start with that one?
I think this is a classic scenario where money talks. It's a lot harder.
Oh, it's spoken.
Putting dirt down, putting grass down, it takes a lot of coordination from the city, the public works. And so as far as what I plan to do with that, you know, that's a hard question. So is this something that we feel like the city should have to pay for? Is this something that we should try to work towards private funding? As a town council member, that's something I'm very interested in. I come from a rich family of veterans, and I am intrigued by the Tyler Pickett story and what we can do to honor him. And so whether it's working with the people and raising money and then sitting down and having conversations and meeting with public works and what we can do to move this along, that's something that I'm definitely interested in. And then I guess what really talks is what the town wants, you know, getting out and talking to people. Is this something, you know, that we want to work towards? And I personally, I think it's a great project that would make the town a lot better.
Sure, I think what Bob was saying makes a lot of sense. You know, to get to, yes, there is money available for it. Councilman Wilcox has been working hard on this and kind of running with it. You know, I do see, and again, we're trying to stretch a dollar so many ways. And so for me to sit here and think that, you know, we should use out of the general fund to pay for a new park, no, I think our job is to provide water, sewer, all of those, you know, the fundamental infrastructure it needs for our citizens. But, you know, I do think as a community, one thing that, I don't know if it's unique to Saratoga, but it is something that really attracts me to our community is there's no shortage of, and you might disagree with me, but there's no shortage of volunteers when we've got a real good idea that can be run with. And so, you know, I would prefer, you know, in Steve's work with the American Legion and those guys, you know, maybe the Lions Club, other you know, community-based programs to help out with that.
Have you figured out the dollar figure that's already in the coffers for it?
I don't know that off the top of my head.
Okay. Nobody seems
I'm not sure of the history of the Tyler Pickett Park and where it accepted, whether it was with the city or a private person or a group or an organization. But I do think hearing the monies have floundered or they don't know where they're at or what's actually been given and who's in charge. But I think an entity needs to be developed to oversee it. It needs to be managed by someone. I think it's dishonor that we've taken so long to Tyler Pickett, who grew up with my children. I don't think he hesitated when he did 3 tours in Iraq and lost his life a very short time before he came home. I personally would like to see that area because it looks so blighted, right next door to a beautiful resort, next door to a beautiful Veterans Island. I think it would be much more stunning if we can move forward. But again, I think we need to do it managed.
I would like to invite everyone to come to my office, and I want to hear from you, especially you, Kate, because you seem to know exactly where all the dead bodies are, you know, and what needs to be done, because, you know, the guidance of like for yourself, you know the remedy. So, and probably all of you here know the remedy, so come to my office, right next to Duke's, and we'll have a conversation. Yes, ma'am?
I just wanted to say a point. I talked to Ed and I talked to Steve, and I think the money that everyone's talking about is from all towns, is on the wrong side of the budget or something like that. I know we're leaving this money, so.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, I wasn't actually sure where the budget and financing had gone. I've heard a number of stories about things being diverted or disappearing, and I'm glad to hear that maybe that's been reallocated. But, you know, that